Should we start?
Yeah, I think we've got a couple of people joining, and we can just sort of keep it fresh so that it's not too interruptive if people get here late. Thank you for being here. I think this could be a really awesome opportunity for a conversation just about I want to debunk some of the myths of sustainability. I want to talk about sustainability and smart, and I think you'd be a really good person to talk to about that. You're one of our advisors from Smart Building Certification within sustainability. You've done just some very cool projects within sustainability and the building environment, and just a really nice gal. Heather, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Heather. I'm a researcher, an academic by training. I have a PhD in engineering, actually. So I'm a fairly technical, analytical person. And I'm really passionate about sustainability, resource efficiency in general. All of the work I've been doing, for a long time has been related to improving our natural and built environment to be more efficient and to be better and healthier. And I've done lots of projects around different things within the built environment, from big infrastructure industry to buildings, but always with an eye kind of on sustainability, I guess. So energy, water, waste, food.
Yeah, you built a rooftop garden in Toronto.
Yeah.
Like over a decade ago.
Yeah, so while I was doing my
PhD, right?
While I was doing my PhD, I thought, what a good time to start I'm always doing side projects. And so while I was doing my PhD, it was totally unrelated to my doctoral research. But I really liked I was really interested in urban agriculture and growing food in the city, because I didn't have a balcony or a garden space at the time. That was one of the reasons. And I really like the engineering challenge as well of an existing building that maybe doesn't have the structural capacity to support a depth of soil that could then support vegetables to grow food. So I really kind of tasked myself and the friends that I brought in to help me with coming up with innovative ways to grow food on an existing rooftop that with lightweight means, so using as little soil as possible. So I like those types of challenges. How can we kind of rethink things in the built environment to be more sustainable, healthier, improve social, yeah.
Is that a fight? I mean, because now rooftop gardens are very trendy. Sometimes they're combined with rooftop terraces.
Yeah.
And even for Canadians who are always lovely to discuss things with, what kind of resistance did you get over 10 years ago?
It was more about safety. So everyone was really, really concerned about safety because you're on a rooftop and that could be dangerous. So people were very concerned about safety. That was the biggest battle that we had. And I think people just also didn't really get it. They were kind of like, well, why do you want to do this? And then, fast forward 4 years later when I'm finishing up my PhD, and it's, I would go to talks and events at the university and people would be presenting it. I didn't even know it would be coming up as, one of the pillar projects of the university that they were using to bring people in. And so they loved it eventually. We had to prove ourselves a bit. And then it was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is actually really, really cool. Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of things that aren't expected and are really cool, can we talk about debunking some myths about sustainability? So one of the things that I think is really popular with sustainability is that everybody likes sustainability, they're up for it, but it's expensive.
Yeah, I think there's still that belief, especially in real estate, where a lot of it comes down to your return on your investment. And yeah, I think I think that is something that you hear and that I've heard as well. And I don't know, maybe you've heard it too. Is, oh yeah, we would love to do more, but it's too expensive, or it doesn't fit in our budget. Or, you know, I've worked in construction as well. And I remember the client, their budget kind of ended up being a little bit tighter than expected. And the first things that went were all the beautiful, you know, green, you know, the green features. So
That's a nice to have.
Yeah, exactly. It's not, and I think that's changing, of course, because we're faced with these regulations that are coming up, you know, the Paris Agreement, and every country has quite strict, a lot of countries have quite strict regulations, including in the Netherlands, that buildings will have to adhere to in order to be to meet the goals and the requirements of the Paris Agreement. So yeah, I think it's coming, and I think there's not, I mean, it's the only way forward, really. We have to build sustainable buildings. That's just the reality, and I think people start to get that now. The cost thing, there's interesting studies that have been published about this what's the cost versus, you know, what's the cost of sustainability innovations and sustainable buildings. And in some cases, they're slightly more, maybe a few percent more than a conventional building. But of course, it's a range, right? So there are cases where there have been sustainable buildings that cost less than a conventional building. And of course, it depends on what timescale you're looking at as well. So sustainable buildings, okay, maybe cost a little bit more upfront, but then of course, over the lifetime of that building and over the lifetime of operating that building, and any efficiencies that you've achieved with your sustainable design are absolutely going to pay off in the longer term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I posed this question to someone else, but I want to pose it to you too, because I think it's really interesting. So what would a building look like if it was a smart building, but it wasn't sustainable?
Well, so smart technology. So the building is kind of, I think in that case, it would be, the smart technology wouldn't necessarily be used to monitor and optimize for sustainability factors like energy efficiency or lighting, things like that might use a lot of energy, or water. And it might be more focused on, or like ventilation, heating, cooling, all that kind of stuff. A lot related to energy, of course, but maybe more focused on how the building is managed and people management. You might know a little bit more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is really interesting because to ignore sustainability in a building, I think, is one of the biggest missed opportunities, right? And I don't feel like this is talked about enough, where we have utilities that are almost never optimized to their full potential. I mean, we just heard from Edge Technologies that I think they said that 55% of their utilities were being used outside of office hours, so outside of business hours. I mean, this is
crazy.
Arguably the smartest building in the world,
and one of the most sustainable as well.
What?
And one of the most sustainable as well.
Yep.
In terms of materials and how it's designed. Yeah.
And they had to keep looking at the data, as they regularly do, and optimize. So if you take buildings where even just looking at temperature control or temperature regulation is kind of a nice to have, there's a huge amount of savings just in getting involved with your thermostat settings in that way. So I think that there's a huge opportunity for cost saving with sustainability. And there's also, I think, a really interesting business model now where companies are saying, don't pay for our products. We'll wire them into your business, and we'll just keep whatever you save, and we'll help you save money, and we'll just take that at the end of the year. And this looks like a really big win-win, but I do not think that these companies are going to be poor at the end of the year at all. I think this is a very smart business plan, because we know the huge lack of optimization and sustainability that buildings run, right?
Yeah.
So I think I asked you the question, but in my opinion, a building that's smart that isn't looking into sustainability is missing out on a ton of cost savings in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. especially over the longer term as well. But you could see those returns very quickly too, depending on how much energy is being used or what type of building it is, who's there, all that kind of stuff. Every building is a little bit unique, right? So it's nothing is really necessarily one size fits all as well. You do have to, as you were saying, optimize and customize things to your specific situation. Yeah,
definitely. What do you think is one of the coolest things going on with sustainability and technology right now?
In buildings?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm happy to see it become so prevalent and so kind of almost the norm. And I love going to see new buildings like the Edge buildings, for example, and to just the idea that I also like. So I was talking with some people at Edge actually, and we were talking about behavior, and this might be of interest to you as well, and how a lot of buildings have this performance gap, right? So it's kind of what you were just describing with the use of energy in the off-peak hour or in out of business hours. So you have a building and you've built it and designed it as sustainably as possible, and then people come in and they don't necessarily do everything perfectly, and you might not necessarily see the savings that you envisioned because people are adjusting their
screwing it up.
Yeah, they're screwing it up, as people tend to do. And I think the goal that they kind of set, and I think it's really interesting to hear that, is that ultimately you want the building to be so smart that you don't even have to think about adjusting your lighting or your thermostat or those types of things. So I think I think we're not quite there yet, because you do have to optimize quite a lot, but I think that is something nice to look forward to. And the more data we collect and the more we learn, I think the closer we get to that. And then also there's really cool sort of subtle design things that are done in order to nudge sustainable behavior. So for example, putting the staircase in the building kind of front and center, and having the staircase be kind of the pillar of a building, and where people actually pass and meet. And if you ever go into a building that's like that and the elevators are kind of hidden away, you just automatically take the stairs. So of course you're saving energy and maintenance and all of that, but you're also healthier and you're interacting with people more. So little things.
And that crossover is interesting, right? Health and sustainability, because a lot of people say, okay, if you have sustainable windows, then it's actually not as good for health, because to keep the heat in the building is usually smaller buildings. But I think also some solutions, like you're saying, where sustainability and health are incredibly combined. I mean, if you look at different sustainable houses, like the nature house in Sweden, which is becoming more technological, and some of the things that they're doing, I think it has a really exciting crossover. But can we go back to the humans screwing it up? Because I think that's really interesting. And my research is actually a lot into proactive employee healthcare and human technology, human-computer interaction. So I think it's really interesting when we talk about these few really amazing buildings that we know are very sustainable, are very smart. Do you think people we're ready to be in these types of buildings, or do you think that there's an adjustment to, and maybe this is a leading question, I think there's a bit of adjustment to being in a building that's actually well suited for us and good for the world and good for us. So how are we going to stop screwing up being in healthy, sustainable environments, and how do we move forward in that way?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a bit of an adjustment too, even for people who are kind of all in and loving it. It's definitely a bit of an adjustment if you're not used to that. But I guess I think it's going to be a long-term process. And the other thing too, I think that's important is from the get-go, it has to work. Because if I show up at my new workspace that's all smart, and I go to, on my app or whatever technology is telling me which workspace to go to or whatever, and it doesn't work, or if I want to adjust if I walk into a room and the light doesn't turn on or the ventilation doesn't turn on, I mean, nothing is going to make people just, that's the memory that sticks with people too, right? And you hear about, oh yeah, but in the beginning it didn't work, and so it doesn't work now. And, so I think you have to kind of really try and get it right from the start and make sure it works for everyone. Yeah.
And maybe have some hook effects of a space that really pull people in. Okay.
Yeah, and I think as people become aware too, I think awareness is part of it as well. So if people understand the why behind it, I think that can also help as well.
Yeah. So is that the answer, or should we just make a lot of really great buildings and just bring the threshold for what everybody's willing to work in up? I always say, because we both go to Edge for different events. Edge has got the best long-term employment insurance, because people who work there don't want to work anywhere worse in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, completely. Yeah, that's yeah.
So maybe we just spoil everyone and they get used to it, and then hopefully they'll learn along the way. I'm not sure.
There's a question, and you should answer this one, Liz, because you're all about health. But what is your best example of stimulating healthy behavior? You have some good ones of this from your research.
Yeah, I think there's some amazing opportunities for stimulating healthy behavior. Nudging, and Heather's done actually a lot of really cool experiments, nudging people into better behavior. You got people to stop using certain water levels, or cleaning towels at the student hotel, that kind of thing. I think the best thing is peer pressure, or nudging. I think if you design a full ecosystem where everybody's kind of doing healthy behavior, and that you can get through those first few days, then that's amazing. What does that look like? Heather's open staircase is a great one. Having enough green spaces where people realize, I really love working in this green space, having enough private workstations to say, okay, now I really have gotten used to having this private space, this focused time. And then when I want to go out and socialize or collaborate, it's different spaces. So I think it's really creating an ecosystem that's very revolutionary, but also is a few steps back into what humans are actually designed for. That's kind of my thinking.
And I also really like, from a building or from an office perspective, the walking meetings. It was you, right, where you had this sort of maybe you can talk about it. I thought that was a really cool way to stimulate healthy behavior in a work environment where I think health is often or healthy behavior anyways, is maybe not a priority.
Well, and health is so interesting right now, right? Because before, health was this sort of nice to have. Oh, we have extra money, we have a healthy building, And now with COVID, it's health and safety, which the Smart Building Certification does have a section for health and safety. Just my partners would kill me if I didn't mention that. But so walking meetings are really interesting in that I didn't come up with it, but I was working in Switzerland a long time ago, in the mountains, in this beautiful place, and we would stay in the office the whole time. And somebody finally said, do you want to just walk and talk? And so when the big research with CBRE came up, we said, let's have walking meetings. That can be an amazing way to get out. And their office was in South Amsterdam Zuid, which is an incredible space to walk around for a variety of reasons. But yeah, I think walking meetings are fantastic. And yeah, we just got another comment, the peer pressure. I definitely think peer pressure does a lot. I think making something the norm has to be, it just has to be that the majority of people or enough people are doing it. So I think Heather uses peer pressure all the time. She looks really nice, but she does. You would put signs in the different rooms of the student hotel that said, this is saving a polar bear, this is doing that, right? And then and then you put in some of the rooms, 80% of the other guests are doing this. And what worked better? I don't know if I'm quoting you directly, but tell them what worked better.
Well, yeah, I think, well, there's different ways that you can change people's behavior. And one of them is, yeah, sort of kind of comparing them to others, or saying, there's different ways. There's some really interesting work that's been done. And there's a behavioral science group based in the UK, and they have a framework that's called the East framework. If anyone's interested, it's really interesting to look up. It's sort of, it's kind of simple things that you can include in a campaign in order to get people to change their behavior. So, making it easy, accessible, things like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's, so that is one way, but also all people are different, right? So, some people won't respond as well to peer pressure as others. But of course, in a building like an office building, yeah, I think it goes hand in hand with maybe some of those, like we were saying, combining, healthy design, like a staircase. If you see everyone taking the stairs, all your colleagues taking the stairs, you do that as well. Or if everyone's biking to work, and the building prioritizes bike parking or electric vehicle parking, which some buildings do now as well.
Yeah.
All the best parking spaces are for bikes and for electric vehicles,
Well, I think research has shown the incredible power that environment has over people. There was an amazing research that looked at happiness, global happiness. And they said that when you take people who emigrate from a country to another country, they adjust to the average level of happiness in that country within a year, almost black and white. And I think it's amazing. In some ways, it's kind of shocking because we think we're so much more in control of our own brain and our happiness than that. But I think it should be really encouraging for people who work within spaces and environments to say, okay, I am effectively designing the happiness of the people that are in this space for a amount of time. So it's a huge responsibility, but I think it's very exciting in that way. Do we have any questions from people, or do you want to talk about your background and we can pull everybody in? I'd love a little bit more discussion. Not that Heather's not a fantastic person to talk to. I guess the benchmark is going to be the most important tool to implement next to change behavior. Yeah, so benchmarking. What do you think about benchmarking, Heather?
Well, I mean, I'm a researcher, so, we all know the importance of a 0 point or a goal or a starting point, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tibor actually wants to join. Shall we just add it?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Let's see if I can.
Hey.
No.
It works.
Hi.
It's good to finally see you. I've read your book, Elizabeth. It was good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I didn't introduce myself in this session. If anybody doesn't know, I slept through the more painful part of a bikini wax early in my career and decided I wanted to change the way we all work for the better, and got into health. And a little bit of that is in my book as well as the science. So. And now I'm one of the co-founders of the Smart Building Certification, which I'm so excited about the power we have to change buildings. So I finally did that. But Tibor, welcome. Will you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, I'm Tibor, and I'm part of Clarify, and we make smart indoor air quality sensors to improve the indoor air quality and to improve the health and productivity of employees in office buildings.
Great. So you guys are how do you have any free time right now? You must be so busy.
It's busy, but it's fun. Everybody's like, oh, when can we go back to office? Because that's what everybody's waiting for before implementing these kind of solutions. But I think they are going to be an important part in changing people's behavior. What I said, like using a benchmark to compare yourself to other people's offices is going to be an important tool to indeed change existing buildings also. So I guess you're right about that.
Well, and I think air quality is so it's such an easy argument for peer pressure when you look at some of the building performances that we have. I know I had a colleague who was actually, he was doing the air quality in different schools, which is terrible because schools are often older buildings and they sometimes have poor air quality. And he was doing, during a really big exam, a bunch of kids were in one gymnasium or something, and the CO2 level was 7,000 in the room.
Wow.
Yeah, which is, if you could imagine like the stuffiest room or airplane without the air on, it's that plus some more. And trying to do an exam. And so I think air quality, especially with COVID, especially with this, peer pressure is easy. Maybe I'm making it too easy, but I think it's such an easy argument where when we realize how bad air quality is in buildings.
No, and it's logical. I mean, if the CO2 level rises, your blood vessels in your brain just contract, and you get less oxygen to think. So, if you're in a learning process, indeed in schools, it's gonna be really important to have these kids their brain function optimally, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what's your next big challenge then, from a smart building perspective?
I think we're really proud of the different COVID measures that we put into the smart building certification. I think we've also got some amazing thought leaders that we're bringing in for different aspects, because there's a little bit, and I'm sure your company has seen that as well, a little bit of, okay, what do we do right now? We're in very much uncharted territory. So I think that's quite exciting. We always say we're founded in science, so we want to share as much information and thought leadership as possible, but we're refined by practice. So having different tech companies, I think too often people are afraid of tech companies presenting because they're just going to sell you, when the truth is we don't know the technologies or what we can do with them.
So what's your most important recommendation for tech companies like us?
Well, I would love it, you guys, to do some thought leadership within smart building certification. I think that would be really cool if you present some of the different things, especially with COVID. We have some events coming up. That would be cool. We also have some partnerships where we're talking with different tech companies to be involved as sort of part of the founding members and advisory board in that way, where we're looking at that, because we really want this certification to be a marriage of research, health, and found results with practice, and then implemented in a way that's incredibly helpful to the world. So I think we have to cut down all of the silos in order for that to happen.
Yeah.
But I think these kind of events are exactly what needs to happen with that.
Yes, and it's hard. I really would like some advice from you maybe later on, because what we experienced from collaborating with universities, we tried, because I think our data is very interesting and it should be used more, and you can learn a lot of it, but finding the right problem which researchers can go into, or having a company behind it that says like, yeah, we really want to have this researched, or have their name on something, that connection, that is hard to make. So we as a small startup can't make that connection. That's hard.
Yeah, that's challenging. And not all of, because it comes down to funding, really, if you want to do research, right?
Exactly.
And so, and it's great that you're open to being in these consortia with, research institutes and universities and industry. Like, those are the types of projects that get funding right now, because they want to show that you're doing things that are applied and can be put into practice in the real world. But yeah, it is challenging.
About making the right connections. We've done a few of those, and we're going to be doing a lot more with the smart building certification, because if you have a university run living lab, which just means it can only be a small part of your space, you automatically get a bronze certification. So that will hopefully help. And we're having different matchmaking for universities, tech companies, and buildings that want to get this together. So it's like a Tinder for living labs for building.
I'd love to be part of it. I think that's a really good idea.
Nice. Oh, nice. So how long was our session actually?
It's actually finished right now, I think, right?
Perfect. Okay. So if anybody wants to go to smartbuildingcertification.com, you can sign up as a university partner, an academic, you can set up as a technical partner. You can look at different partnerships for if you're a workplace expert, you can become an assessor. You can just email me. Please get involved. We really want to change as much as possible, as fast as possible, and we need your expertise, your technology, your building. Let's just change the world. Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Heather.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
And have a nice day.
Okay. Thanks to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.